Why these countries don't exist yet? Currently, there are a lot of countries, exactly 197. If you count Kosovo, Taiwan, and Palestine, but regardless of how many countries you think there are, this number doesn't change too frequently in the past 2 decades. There have only been 5 new independent countries, and these are as follows. Back in 2002, East Timor declared independence from Indonesia. In 2006, the countries of Serbia and Montenegro split into the 2 countries of Serbia and Montenegro. 2 years later, Kosovo split away from Serbia. And finally, South Sudan split away from Sudan in 2011. And since then, not a single other country has become independent. But let's look towards the future. What are some countries that have the potential to exist? In the coming years or decades over in the center of Africa, the East African Federation is a proposed federal union between the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, and Rwanda. The idea of a federation in East Africa has been discussed for decades, but the process of forming such a federation has faced numerous challenges. One of the main challenges has been the issue of cooperation among the member countries. For the federation to be successful, the member countries must be willing to work together and coordinate their policies. And actions. Corruption in some of the countries' governments is another issue, and has caused this process to take a lot longer than it normally would have, aside from all the issues. A regional constitution is already in progress, although nobody knows when exactly it'll be completed. If or when the union becomes a reality, the East African Federation would be the new largest country in Africa at more than 2 times the size of Algeria. Another example of a country union is in Europe with the case of Kosovo and Albania. The idea of a combined Kosovar-Albanian state started to gain traction when Kosovo first broke away from Serbia in 2008. One of the main arguments in favor of the Kosovo-Albania union is the potential economic benefits. That it could bring a union that would allow for greater economic integration and cooperation between the 2 countries, potentially leading to increased trade investment and economic growth opponents. This union argues that it would be difficult to implement and could lead to conflicts with other countries in the region. So far, a union between Kosovo and Albania doesn't seem like it. It's too likely to happen in the future, and for now, it just remains a political idea moving a little bit east in the disputed territory of Transnistria. Transnistria is a region in Eastern Europe that is officially part of Moldova, but many of its residents claim that it's their own independent country. One of the main reasons for this is that Transnistria has a predominantly Russian-speaking population, whereas Moldova is largely Romanian-speaking. This has led to cultural and linguistic tensions between the 2 sides, with Transnistria feeling that its rights and identity aren't being respected by the Moldovan government. Even though it officially declared independence from Moldova in 1990, it struggled to gain recognition on a global scale, and currently not a single other country recognizes its sovereignty. The people living there continue to fight for recognition, and who knows, we might see a time in the future when Transnistria has succeeded in its independence movement and achieves global recognition as a legitimate country. A more complicated situation can be observed when you take a look at the Horn of Africa. Somaliland is a region located in modern-day Somalia, and it's bordered by Ethiopia and Djibouti to the west. Following a civil war in 1991, Somaliland declared itself independent from Somalia. Since then, it has operated separately from the rest of Somalia, with its distinct government and democratic elections. But the only thing preventing it from becoming a country is its lack of recognition from any other country as a sovereign nation. If sometime in the future Somaliland can settle its dispute with Somalia, then it'll most likely start to gain recognition on a global scale. On the other side of Africa is the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, a country you probably know as Western Sahara. The history of the region is complex, being fought over by various powers throughout its history. In the late 19th century, Spain colonized the region, and it remained under Spanish control until 1976, when Spain withdrew from the territory. Morocco and Mauritania both claimed control over Western Sahara. However, the Sahrawi people make up the majority of the population. In the territory opposed these claims, and wanted independence. Currently around 80% of Western Sahara is controlled by Morocco, and the other 20% are under the control of the Sahrawi people. Some countries choose to label this territory as disputed, and others recognize the legitimacy of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. But until this issue gets resolved, likely, we won't ever see the complete recognition of this country. Over in Oceania is Bougainville, which is the country on this list that is the most likely to successfully gain independence. Bougainville is an autonomous region located in Papua New Guinea. In the late 20th century, Bougainville was at the center of a long and violent conflict over independence from Papua New Guinea. The root cause of this conflict was a dispute over the exploitation of natural resources on the island. You see, Bougainville is home to the Panguna mine. One of the largest copper reserves in the world, the mine was highly profitable and generated significant revenue for the Papuan government, but it also had several negative impacts on the local population. The civil war lasted from 1988 to 1998 and resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of people. In 2001, a peace agreement was reached between the people of Bougainville and the Papua New Guinea government, which called for a referendum. On independence to be held almost 20 years later in 2019, the referendum was held, and an overwhelming majority of people voted in favor of independence. The Papuan government declared that the people of Bougainville would be given independence during the year 2027. Unless Bougainville later chooses to stay within Papua New Guinea, it will become the newest country in the entire world. Moving all the way over to the Middle East is Kurdistan. The Kurdish people are an ethnic group with a distinct language, culture, and history, and have long sought recognition and self-determination. If Kurdistan ever became a country, the maximum claim of their territory would stretch to parts of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. All of these regions have a majority Kurdish population and people who support Kurdish. Independence believes that these lands should be incorporated into a Kurdish state. Other people take a more moderate stance and instead just desire a greater degree of autonomy within the countries they live in. One of the key successes of this moderate standpoint has been the establishment of the Kurdistan Regional Government. In northern Iraq, the KRG was established in 1992 as a semi-autonomous region within Iraq and has since gained control over its own affairs. The KRG has its own parliament, president, and military forces, and it's responsible for managing health care and many other public services. In the region in 2017, the KRG held a non-binding referendum on independence, which was overwhelmingly approved by the Kurdish population, and more than 92% wanted independence. While the referendum was not recognized by the Iraqi government or the international community, it was seen as an important step forward for the Kurdish independence movement. However, the movement has also faced numerous challenges and setbacks. In Turkey, the Kurdish independence movement has been met with violent repression and persecution. In Iran, it's faced similar challenges with many Kurdish activists arrested and impressed. Isn't it hard to say whether the Kurdish people will ever have their state? But for now, they'll keep on fighting to have sovereignty. This next new potential country is located in Bosnia, and it's called the Republika Srpska. Republika Srpska is an autonomous entity within Bosnia and Herzegovina that was established in 1992 following the breakup of Yugoslavia after the Bosnian War, which took place from 1992 to 1995. The current political structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina was established as a federal state consisting of two parts: the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which had a mostly Bosniak and Croat population, and Republika Srpska, which had a majority Serbian population. Republika Srpska has maintained a high degree of autonomy within Bosnia and Herzegovina, but some people in this region desired complete independence. In 2006, they had a referendum on independence, which was declared illegal by the Bosnian Constitutional Court. Since then, the question of independence remains a contentious issue and hasn't yet been. Widespread support in the Americas is the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was originally colonized by Spain, but was ceded to the United States. In 1898, following the Spanish-American War, since then, Puerto Rico has remained a territory of the United States, with its residents officially being given the title of U.S. citizens in 1917. Throughout the 20th century, there were several efforts by Puerto Rican citizens to seek greater autonomy or independence from the United States. One example of this is in 1952, when Puerto Rico adopted a new constitution that established the island as a commonwealth of the United States, giving it greater self-government and the ability to elect its governor in recent years. There have been renewed efforts by some Puerto Ricans to seek independence. In 2012, Puerto Rico held a non-binding referendum on its political status, in which a majority of voters chose to become a state. However, the referendum was not recognized by the U.S. Congress, and Puerto Rico's status as a territory remains unchanged. To this day, Puerto Rico remains subject to the authority of the U.S. Congress. And the idea of Puerto Rican independence is still largely discussed. It'll be interesting to see how the future plays out and which countries we can expect to see in the coming years. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you hit that red button.